Wake up with Wake.
On different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that create the same experiences that produce the same. Can I teach my body emotionally what my future will feel like before it happens? People need a rush of dopamine in order to catch their attention, or a rush of adrenaline to learn. And so that they're dependent on their outer environment to regulate their emotional state. Now, this is different now. Now, I'm going to say to you, get in that beautiful heart of yours, and I want you to feel gratitude for the event before it occurs. Well, I can't feel it because it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, that's the conditioning. That's the hypnosis. So then when you teach purple people how to create heart coherence and self-regulate, then it makes sense then with a coherent brain, they can hold the image of their future. They can actually then rehearse who they're going to be. They can bring up the emotions of their future. Now, here's the cool part. If they can feel their gratitude before their healing begins. If they feel their abundance or their worthiness before they have their wealth, it will start generating abundance. If they start being in love with themselves and being in love with life, they'll create an equal. That's the law. If they're in awe of life or in awe of the moment, they're going to have a mystical experience. If they're empowered, they're going to start stepping towards their success. So then when we wait for the outer world to change our internal state, that's a conditioning process, because some people will live in lack and separation their entire life because they're not creating anything. When this happens, then I'll feel happy. That's the illusion of three-dimensional reality. That's cause and effect, but feeling the emotion ahead of the experience is causing an effect. So the heart, when it's coherent, tends to produce an external magnetic field that's up to 3 meters wide. Now you got a Wi-Fi signal. Now when you have a coherent brain, the brain could actually lay the information on that signal. And the thought of your wealth or your health can be carried on the frequency of that heart emotion. Emotions are the end product of an experience, right? Epigenetics says that's the environment that signals the gene. If the environment signals the gene and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, that person's signaling genes ahead of the environment. And now they're biologically believing, behaving, and actually becoming that person. So if the person sustains that state, and we look at novice meditators that come for a week, and 90% of them, and the metabolites, not just a few, the majority of the metabolites and novice meditators suggest that their body's in a different life. One of the keys to breaking the habit of being yourself is working toward being more observant, whether that entails being more metacognitive, monitoring your thoughts, embracing stillness, or focusing more attention on your behaviors and how elements in your environment might trigger emotional responses. So the big question here is, how do you do all this? In other words, how do you become more observant, break your emotional bonds with the body, the environment, and time, and close the gap? The answer is simple: meditation. You may have noticed that, up to this point, I have teased you with brief allusions to meditation as the way to break the habit of being yourself and begin to create a new life as your ideal self. When I use the term meditation, an image of a person seated cross-legged in front of a shrine at home, bearded and gowned yogi sitting in a secluded cave in the Himalayas, or some other visual may come to mind. That individual may be a representation of what you understand is the way to go quiet, empty the mind, focus all of one's attention on a thought, or engage in any of the other variations of the practice of meditation. There are a lot of meditative techniques, but my wish is to help you produce the most desirable benefit of meditation, being able to access and enter the operating system of the subconscious mind so that you move away from simply being yourself and your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions, observing those things. And then once you're there to subconsciously reprogramming your brain and body to a new mind, when you move from unconsciously producing thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions, and take control of them through the conscious application of your will, you can unlock the chains of being your old self to become a new self.
We teach people this. As they start breaking through and they start being able to unfold into this field as an awareness, and they're not putting their attention on their boss or their ex or their wife or their kids or their cell phone or their WhatsApp or their Facebook, they're not thinking at all. So then, as they're sensing the space, they can't think. And if you can't think, you can't analyze. And if you can't analyze, the analytical mind is what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious. Just open the door.
Wow.
And so now you can reprogram in there, right? So then, it's so important then that of the infinite places you can put your attention, let's put it on your heart. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Why? Because we want this center to bloom. 1,400, 1,300 different chemicals that restore and regenerate the body. Let's breathe. Let's open this up. Let's practice this. Let's start learning how to lead with our heart. A different consciousness. Yeah, in the beginning, it's a little difficult, but you stay with it and you practice it, pedal by pedal by pedal, placing your attention there, you're putting your own life force back into your heart. You're turning your love inward, and the body will start responding. And in a week's time, if we're doing that 3 times a day or over and over again, sooner or later, that thing's going to start blooming. And just like when your sexual organs are aroused and they're engorged with blood, this center, when you start feeling love, you make a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called derived endothelial relaxing factor. You know what that is? It causes the arteries in your heart to literally open up. So your heart is going to be filled with blood and oxygen and nutrients. It's physiological. It's going to feel full. You're going to have a heart-on, in a sense. Your heart is going to fill, right? And when that happens...
My name is Scott Harrison.
Just listen.
This is my wife, my son, and my one.
You experience a level of love that passes all understanding. Your cup runneth over. I mean, it is, and people they're sobbing because they realize that this center finally, like a child.
In the Tibetan language, to meditate means to become familiar with. Accordingly, I use the term meditation as a synonym for self-observation as well as self-development. After all, to become familiar with anything, we have to spend some time observing it. Again, the key moment in making any change is going from being it to observing it. Another way to think of this transition is when you go from being a doer to a doer-watcher. An easy analogy I can use is that when athletes or performers, golfers, skiers, swimmers, dancers, singers, or actors want to change something about their technique, most coaches have them watch videotape of themselves. How can you change from an old mode of operation to a new one unless you can see what old and new look like? It's the same with your old and your new self. How can you stop doing things one way without knowing what that way looks like? I frequently use the term unlearning to describe this phase of changing. This process of becoming familiar with the self works both ways. You need to see the old and the new self. You have to observe yourself so precisely and vigilantly as I've described that you won't allow any unconscious thought, emotion, or behavior to go unnoticed. Since you have the equipment to do this because of the size of your frontal lobe, you can look at yourself and decide what you want to change in order to do a better job in life. Decide to stop being the old you. When you can become conscious of those unconscious aspects of the old habituated self rooted in the operating system of the subconscious, you are beginning the process of changing anything about yourself. What steps do you normally take when you get serious about doing something differently? You separate yourself from your external world long enough to think about what to do and not do. You start becoming aware of many aspects of the old self, and you begin to plan a course of action related to a new self. For example, if you want to become happy, the first step is to stop being unhappy. That is, stop thinking the thoughts that make you unhappy, and stop feeling the emotions of pain, sorrow, and bitterness. If you desire to become wealthy, you'll probably decide to stop doing the things that make you poor. If you want to be healthy, you'll have to stop living an unhealthy lifestyle. These examples are to show you that first, you have to make the decision to stop being the old you to such a degree that you make room for a new personality, thinking, acting, and doing. Therefore, if you eliminated stimuli from your external world by closing your eyes and becoming quiet, decreasing your sensory input, putting your body in a state of stillness, and no longer focusing on linear time, you could become aware solely of how you are thinking and feeling. And if you began to pay attention to your unconscious states of mind and body and became familiar with your automatic unconscious programs until they became conscious, would you be meditating? The answer is yes. To know thyself is to meditate. If you are no longer being that old personality, but instead are noticing different aspects of it, wouldn't you agree that you are the consciousness observing the programs of that past identity? In other words, if you consciously observe the old self, you are no longer being it. As you go from being unaware to being aware, you are beginning to objectify your subjective mind. That is, by your paying attention to the old habit of being you, your conscious participation begins to separate you from those unconscious programs and give you more control over them. By the way, if you are successful in consciously restraining those routine states of mind and body, then nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. As you prune away the neurological hardware of the old self, you also no longer signal the same genes in identical ways. You are breaking the habit of being you.
Do you think a simple glass of water can help you solve some of the biggest problems in your life? I want to teach you a technique that I've been doing since I was 15 years old, and it's really powerful.
We've done studies with novice meditators. We were curious to see what kind of biological changes would take place in 1 week if you went all in. We draw blood and we look at about 2,882 metabolites. And at the end of 7 days, the novice meditators, almost 100% of them, show substantial biological changes in their blood that suggest that they're living in a different environment. Now, here's the weird part about it. They're in a ballroom. They're actually making those changes inwardly. And I say to our research team, where are those chemicals coming from? And the person's not taking any substance. It's coming from within us. And so the nervous system starts manufacturing a whole pharmacy of chemicals equal to the person's intention and emotional state. And it's how we think and how we feel that begins to alter things in our lives.
Your goal is to become a new personality, a new state of being. So if you are a new personality, you are being somebody else, right? Your old personality, based on how you thought, felt, and acted, has created the reality that you presently are experiencing. In short, how you are as a personality is how you are in your personal reality. Remember also that your personal reality is made up of how you think, feel, and act. By doing each of those in a new way, you are creating both a new self and a new reality. Your new personality should produce a new reality. In other words, when you are being someone else, you naturally will have a different life. If you suddenly changed your identity, you would be another person, and therefore you would certainly live as someone else. If the personality called John became the personality known as Steve, we could say that John's life would change because he is no longer being John, but is now thinking, acting, and feeling like Steve. Here is another example. One time while I was lecturing in California, A woman approached me in front of the audience with her hands on her hips, intensely focused, angrily exclaiming, "How come I'm not living in Santa Fe?" I calmly replied, because the person who was just talking to me is the personality who is living in Los Angeles. The personality who would be living and is already in Santa Fe looks nothing like that. Thus, from a quantum perspective, this new personality is the perfect place to create from. The new identity is no longer emotionally anchored to known situations in your life that keep recycling the same circumstances. Therefore, it is a perfect place from which to envision a new destiny. This is the place you want to be to call out a new life. The reason why your prayers were hardly ever answered in the past is that you were trying to hold a mindful intention while being lost in lower emotions such as guilt, shame, sadness, unworthiness, anger, or fear connected to the old self. It was those feelings that were governing your thoughts and attitude. The 5% of your mind that is conscious was fighting against the 95% that is the subconscious body mind. Thinking one way and feeling another cannot produce anything tangible energetically that broadcasts a mixed signal to the invisible web that orchestrates reality. Thus, if you were being guilty because your body memorized the mind of guilt, then you probably received whatever you were being, situations in your life that evoked more reasons to feel guilty. Your conscious aim could not stand up against your being that memorized emotion. As this new identity, however, you are thinking and feeling differently than the old identity. You are in a state of mind and body that now is sending a perfect signal free from your past memories. For the first time, the lens of your mind is now lifted above the present landscape to see a new horizon. You are looking to the future, not your past. Simply said, you can't create a new personal reality while you are still being the old personality. You have to become someone else. Once you are in a new state of being, now is the time to create a new
Don't expect anything in your life to change if your environment is controlling your feelings and thoughts. And if your environment is controlling how you feel and think, and I say to you, Aubrey, why are you so upset today? Oh, well, this person is upsetting me. What you're really saying is that person is controlling your feelings and your thoughts, and that means you're a victim to your environment. So to turn that around and you start realizing your feelings and thoughts create your environment, and you start seeing the effects of you at cause, you're going to react less to the people in your life because you're going to understand that you'll be back to the victim consciousness. And when you start seeing that you're creating outcomes in your life, you're going to believe more that you're the creator of your life and less the victim of your life. And I say, the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
If at some point in your past you were shocked, betrayed, or traumatized by an event with a high emotional charge that has left you feeling pain or sadness or fear, chances are that experience has been branded into your biology in numerous ways. It's also possible that the genes that were activated by this experience might keep your body from healing. So in order for you to change your body into a new genetic expression, the inner emotion you create has to be greater than the emotion from that past outer experience. The energy of your empowerment or the amplitude of your inspiration must be greater than your pain or sadness. Now you are changing the inner environment of the body, which is the outer environment of the cell. The genes for health can be up-regulated while the genes for disease can be down. Regulated, the more profound the emotion, the louder you're knocking on your genetic door, and the more you're going to signal those genes to change the structure and function of your body. That's how it works. We can actually prove this because in one of our 2017 advanced workshops in Tampa, we measured gene expression in a randomized selection of 30 workshop participants. The results showed that our students were able to significantly change the expression of 8 genes over the course of the 4-day workshop by changing their internal states. There is only one possibility in 20 that the results were due to chance. That's the threshold of significance that statisticians usually use. The functions of these genes are far-ranging. They're involved in neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning, protecting the body against various influences that tend to age cells, regulating cell repair, including the ability to move stem cells to those sites in the body where there need to repair damaged or aging tissue, building cellular structures, especially the cytoskeleton, the framework of rigid molecules that give our cells shape and form, eliminating free radicals and so decreasing oxidative stress associated with aging and many major health conditions, and helping our bodies identify and eliminate cancerous cells, thereby suppressing the growth of cancer tumors. Activating the genes for neurogenesis was particularly significant because most of the time our students were in meditation. They were so present in their inner world of imagination that their brains believed they were in the actual event. If our students have changed their gene expression by creating elevated emotions in just a few days, imagine what you can do if you practice this meditation for a few weeks by using this breath technique to release the familiar emotions stored in body from years of thinking and feeling the same way. And then by emotionally rehearsing new states every day with practice, these unlimited emotions will become the new normal for you. Your brain will think different thoughts equal to those elevated emotions. Finally, by embracing these unlimited emotions instead of the same limited ones. When you understand that you are signaling new genes and making new proteins that are responsible for the change in structure and function of your body, you can assign more meaning to what you are doing. That leads to a greater intention, which creates an even greater outcome. It is a scientific fact that we use about 1.5% of our DNA. The rest is called junk DNA. There is a principle in biology called endowment that holds that nature never wastes anything that it is not going to use. In other words, if the junk DNA is there, there must be a reason. Otherwise, nature in its infinite wisdom would have evolved it away, because the universal law is if you don't use it, you lose it. So think of your genes as a library of potentials. There are infinite combinations of gene variations that can be expressed in those latent genes. They're waiting for you to activate them. There are genes for an unlimited genius mind, for longevity, for mortality, for an uncompromising will, for the capacity to heal, for having mystical experiences, for regenerating tissues and organs, for activating the hormones of youth so you have greater energy and vitality, for photographic memory, and for doing the uncommon, just to name a few. It's all equal to your imagination and creativity. As you signal any of those genes ahead of the environment, your body will express a greater potential by expressing new genes to make new proteins for a greater expression of life. So when I ask you to feel certain elevated emotions when you recondition the body to a new mind, know that as you embrace each emotion, you are knocking on your own genetic door.
People need a rush of dopamine in order to catch their attention, or a rush of adrenaline to learn. And so that they're dependent on their outer environment to regulate their emotional state. Now, this is different now. Now, I'm going to say to you, get in that beautiful heart of yours, and I want you to feel gratitude for the event before it occurs. Well, I can't feel it because it hasn't happened yet. That's the conditioning. That's the hypnosis. So then when you teach people how to create heart coherence and self-regulate, and it makes sense then with a coherent brain, they can hold the image of their future. They can actually then rehearse who they're going to be. They can bring up the emotions of their future. Now, here's the cool part.
Awesome.
If they can feel their gratitude before their healing begins. If they feel their abundance or their worthiness before they have their wealth, it will start generating abundance. If they start being in love with themselves and being in love with life, they'll create an equal. That's the law. If they're in awe of life or in awe of the moment, they're going to have a mystical experience. If they're empowered, they're going to start stepping towards their success. So then when we wait for the outer world to change our internal state, that's a conditioning process, because some people will live in lack and separation their entire life because they're not creating anything. When this happens, then I'll feel happy. That's the illusion of three-dimensional reality. That's cause and effect, but feeling the emotion ahead of the experience is causing an effect. So the heart, when it's coherent, tends to produce an external magnetic field that's up to 3 meters wide. Now you got a Wi-Fi signal. Now when you have a coherent brain, the brain could actually lay the information on that signal. And the thought of your wealth or your health can be carried on the frequency of that heart emotion. Emotions are the end product of an experience, right? Epigenetics says it's the environment that signals the gene. If the environment signals the gene and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, that person's signaling genes ahead of the environment. And now they're biologically believing, behaving, and actually becoming that person. So if the person sustains that state, and we look at novice meditators that come for a week, 90% of them, and the metabolites, not just a few, the majority of the metabolites in novice meditators suggest that their body's in a different life.
Our routine, known thoughts and feelings perpetuate the same state of being, which creates the same behaviors and creates the same reality. So if we want to change some aspect of our reality, we have to think, feel, and act in new ways. We have to be different in terms of our responses to experiences. We have to become someone else. We have to create a new state of mind. We need to observe a new outcome with that new mind. From a quantum standpoint, we have to create a different state of being as an observer and generate a new electromagnetic signature. When we do, we will match a potential reality in the field that exists only as an electromagnetic potential. Once that match exists between who we are being, what we are broadcasting, and the electromagnetic potential in the field, we will be pulled toward that potential reality, or it will find us. I know that it's frustrating when life seems to produce an endless succession of minor variations on the same negative outcomes. But as long as you stay the same person, as long as your electromagnetic signature remains the same, you can't expect a new outcome. To change your life is to change your energy, to make an elemental change in your mind and emotions. If you want a new outcome, you will have to break the habit of being yourself and reinvent a new self. What do your state of being and a laser have in common? A laser is an example of a very coherent signal. When physicists talk about a coherent signal, they are referring to a signal made up of waves that are in phase. Their troughs, low points, and crests, high points, are parallel. When those waves are coherent, they are much more powerful. Waves in a signal are either aligned or unaligned, coherent or incoherent. The same goes for your thoughts and feelings. How many times have you tried to create something, thinking in your mind that the end result was possible, but feeling in your heart that it wasn't? What was the result of that incoherent signal that you were sending? Why is it that nothing manifested? If your intentions and desires haven't produced consistent results, you've probably been sending an incoherent, mixed message into the field. You may want wealth, you may think wealthy thoughts, but if you feel poor, you aren't going to attract financial abundance to yourself. Why not? Because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. You're thinking one way and feeling another way. And when the mind is in opposition to the body, or vice versa, the field won't respond in any consistent way. Instead, when mind and body are working together, when our thoughts and feelings are aligned, when we are in a new state of being, then we are sending a coherent signal on the airwaves of the invisible. Now let's fill in another piece of the puzzle. To change our reality, those outcomes that we attract to ourselves have to surprise, even astonish us in the way in which they come about. We should never be able to predict how our new creations will manifest. They must catch us off guard. They have to wake us up from the dream of the routine reality that we've grown accustomed to. These manifestations should leave us with no doubt that our consciousness made contact with the quantum field of intelligence. So we are inspired to do this again. That is the joy of the creative process. Why should you want a quantum surprise? If you can predict an event, it is nothing new. It's routine, automatic, and you have experienced it many times before. If you can predict it, the same you produce the same familiar outcome. In fact, if you're trying to control how an outcome will occur, you just went Newtonian. Newtonian classical. Physics was about trying to anticipate and predict events. It was all about cause and effect. What does going Newtonian mean when applied to your ability to create? It's when the external environment is controlling your internal environment, thinking, feeling. That's cause and effect. Instead, change your internal environment, the way you think and feel, and then see how the external environment is altered by your efforts. Strive to create an unknown, new future experience. Then when an unforeseen event occurs in your favor, you will be pleasantly surprised. You just became a quantum creator. You just went from cause and effect to causing an effect. Hold a clear intention of what you want, but leave the how details to the unpredictable quantum field. Let it orchestrate an event in your life in a way that is just right for you. If you're going to expect anything, expect the unexpected. Surrender, trust, and let go of how a desired event will unfold. This is the biggest hurdle for most to overcome, because we human beings always want to control a future reality by trying to recreate how it occurred in a past reality.
Kodiak protein oatmeal. Fast, fueling, and full of flavor.
I have worked so hard in getting people to the point where they can forget about themselves and become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. People, when they finally get this, when they finally realize that when they're pure consciousness and they're connected to the field, and then they start putting their attention on that frequency of oneness and wholeness and tune into it and pay attention to it and stay present with it and become more aware of it and experience it and feel it moment after moment after moment. How much of people's waking day do they put their attention on the field, and how much do they put their attention on matter? I'd say 100% of the time they put their attention on matter. Now, my students are connecting to a greater frequency. They know how to get beyond themselves. They can sit for extended periods of time. They can lock in. If they're connecting to that level of frequency called the quantum field, where they're experiencing something cool that you can't experience with your senses, as you evolve and unfold deeper into it, you experience less separation and more oneness and wholeness. And the more connected you are to it, the less distance between you as a consciousness and the consciousness of the objective unified field.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them. Because I don't always wake up and feel motivated to go take on the day. And the thing that saves me, that helps me every day, is being around people who are thinking bigger, who are changing the world, and it gives me a little more inspiration to go after my mission. And so I hope this video helps you go up to yours today, too. So today, let's get some incredible motivation from the one and only Joe Dispenza. Enjoy.
You're outside the fundamental rules of Newtonian physics and 3D reality. You're changing the field, and it changes matter instantaneously. So now we're seeing it happen in a shorter amount of time because we're getting better at it. We're connecting to that field more. And I know this to be the case because when I witness it in week-long events, I know the moment. I can tell you when the energy shifts in the room, and now I know it's going to be fun. Now I know, get ready because the miracles are happening. It'll happen in 1 week. You tell me how a tumor can disappear on a person's thyroid. Not one, not two. You tell me how a man with a stroke who's been paralyzed in his arm and leg, that's in his 70s, paralyzed for years, and now lifting his arm above his head. How do you explain that? He didn't do that matter to matter. He didn't change his diet. He didn't do physical therapy. He didn't try to have a good attitude and think positively. There was none of that. something in the field changed, and the pattern of that condition in the field changed. So it is happening in a shorter amount of time. There is no rule. It's about the person's ability to pay attention and to focus, to be greater than their body, their environment, and time. It's their sincerity. It's the engagement when they go sit down and do it. They're not doing, oh man, I gotta do this. That's the wrong attitude. Nothing's gonna happen then. You get there like, I'm going to connect with the divine. This is gonna be a great day. I'm gonna keep my energy up. I'm not getting up until I feel like I'm empowered. That person's gonna have a rocking day. They're gonna have a good day. I think we've all experienced those synchronicities where you're thinking about something or you have an intention and all of a sudden you start to see reality kind of conform itself around you in some way and you're not going anywhere to get it. Somehow it seems to be coming to you. And there's a very direct correlation between energy and reality. So when you start to synchronize your energy to a possibility that exists in the quantum field, and you have a coherent brain, there's a very, very specific signal that we can send out that's very, very coherent and clear. And when we match that brain coherence with heart coherence, it is the heart that acts as a magnet and draws the experience back to us. So the thought being the electrical charge and the feeling being the magnetic charge, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts information into the quantum field. And I think whatever we broadcast into the field is our experiment with destiny. So we either create from the field or we create from matter. And if we create from matter, as bodies local in space and time and three-dimensional reality, we have to move through space to get what we want. We have to move back and forth to work and drive there to manifest our dreams. And creating in three-dimensional reality takes time and it takes energy. Sometimes people get so lost in reality they forget what their dreams were because there's too much time between cause, the thought, and effect, the experience. And that's what separation does in three-dimensional reality. Creating from the field and getting beyond yourself, your associations to everything physical and known, and being able to enter through a small door, the eye of the needle, the quantum field, passing through that eye of the needle as pure consciousness and connecting to a field and teaching people how to create from the field instead of from matter, connected to that unified field, to source energy. When they create from source and they're connected to source, and source is the cause that creates matter, the effect. If we create from source, connected to it from the field, instead of from matter, we don't have to go anywhere now to get what we want. We begin to draw the experiences to us. So by combining heart coherence with brain coherence, now we have a Wi-Fi signal. And all we have to do is synchronize our energy to some intention with some emotion and tune in to the energy of the future. And the longer you're conscious of this energy, the more you draw your future to you. And if you keep practicing it every day, it's going to become familiar to you. And all of a sudden, that will be your natural energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life. And the more coherent the signatures electromagnetically, the more refined the experience we have.
It's like a classic vinyl album, but urban. Old photos that never gets old. I think the greatest relationship that you could ever have is with yourself. And taking time to be in the presence of yourself and ask yourself important questions like, are you happy? Who am I? And instead of getting up and getting on your cell phone and getting distracted, sit with your triple filtered water or a glass of wine or whatever you're into, JJ. Sit down and answer the question without being distracted. The contemplation process is the building process neurologically. And for me, I was just a guy. I'm a guy who loves God. I'm a guy who loves the divine. I'm a guy who loves mystery. I'm the guy who just never stops dovetailing information. I mean, that's just me. And I never really planned on doing any of this. I mean, my theories on life is make it up as you go along and take the value and run. And what the belief became a sensation. And all of a sudden, I went from a normal guy to being a rock star.
And I was traveling around the world and doing conferences all over the place, and I reached this point where I realized that I wasn't living the work. And that really bothered me. I was disturbed by that. I was really uncomfortable. And when you get uncomfortable and nothing's making that discomfort go away, it's time to evolve. It's time to make a different choice. And I clearly heard in my head during one meditation, stop making the same choices and pause. I didn't know what that meant, except that I knew that I was relying on all of this external stimulation to build an identity that I really wasn't. And then I had to show up for people and look a certain way and act a certain way, and that wasn't me. And it got disturbing for me. And I had this gap between the way I appeared and the way I really was. And I didn't make time for myself and make time to be the example. I mean, my motive is always be the example of everything that I teach. If I'm not, I shouldn't be up here. I shouldn't be leading in my clinic if I don't live those principles myself, if I don't live my life that way. And so, at the height of my popularity, I disappeared. I canceled all my events. My friends thought I was on crack or something. They thought I lost my mind. Because you know what? They were saying you could make so much money. And I said, I know how to make money. I really don't care about money. I really don't care. I care about how happy I'm going to be with myself. And I broke from the world for 6 months and retreated. And I really decided that if I presented myself back to the world, that I wasn't going to be seduced by it in the same way. That I really wanted to be the example of everything that I taught, and I wanted to lead events in a way that empowered people. I never wanted it to be about me. I wanted it to be about you.
I think that the greatest belief that you could have is the belief in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. And when you believe in possibilities, you have to believe in yourself. So people that enter this work come with a certain amount of chronic disbelief that they could actually change their life or change their health condition. When you see the scientific research that in 7 days, a novice meditator, their biology literally looks like they're in a different life. Mm-hmm. And they're in a ballroom, and there's nothing very special about a ballroom. I've been to thousands of ballrooms. But the environment isn't that stimulating. That those changes are coming from within. You see the data, and you look at how cancer cells, actually, the energy in cancer cells, when you take the plasma of meditators, advanced meditators, and you subject that plasma to all kinds of cancer cells, it's 70% of the mitochondrial function actually diminishes in the cancer cell. Cancer cells love to multiply and they love to move. You take energy out of the cancer cell, you're taking life out of the cancer cell. When people see that data, it gives them hope. Mm-hmm. It gives them the idea that it's possible now. When someone stands on the